Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to just wait a couple more minutes for folks to join, and then we'll get started. Okay, we are going to get rolling. Welcome everyone to the Net Zero vendor call for the Prairie Island Indian community. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jessie Syme and I'm General Counsel for the Prairie Island Indian community. So I head up the legal department and the government relations department and work directly under the tribal council for the tribe. And I just want to first off reminder that the final submissions are due 5 o'clock on October 12, and thank you for continuing to use the email address. I want to give an opportunity for you to meet a few of the other folks that are on this initial Prairie Island Net Zero team. So I'll kick it to JR and Tom and Blake if you're on the call.
Yes. I'm Tom Hansen with the law firm Winthrop and Weinstein, and we represent the Prairie Island Indian community on this matter and various other matters. JR?
And I'm John Reich. I also work at Winthrop and Weinstein law firm in Minneapolis with Tom, and also represent the Prairie Island Indian community on this matter and others. Blake, if you're on.
Okay. Go over the goals of this call. Our goal is to give you additional information to help you feel and be successful in the RFP process and ultimately for Prairie Island to be successful in this project. We hope that the RFP was informative and helpful, but we know that there's probably clarifying questions, and we've gotten quite a few questions in that we'll try to cover today. If we can't cover any today, if we can't give you our best answers, we will follow up in writing and make sure that all parties who've submitted a notice of intent to respond receive those answers. Just some ground rules. Please we ask that you keep the questions, tight to the RFP and to our project today. This is not the opportunity to advocate for your group, to introduce your group, to start the RFP process here, your response. We really just want to be helpful to you, and there will be plenty of opportunity for you to do, to do your part in bidding for this work. Please use the chat box if you have questions that arise on the call. And first I'll go through the list of questions that we've already received in writing, and then we want to be able to take your calls here. So put up your little hand in the chat box and we'll get to you. And I want to just, before we jump right into questions, want to make one overarching comment that I think I at least saw in the questions that we were receiving, a theme or a curiosity all around what role this consultant, the work that you're bidding on, is to the tribe. How does this fit with the tribe's current staff? How does this fit in vision creating, and what is it going to look like in the long term? And I just want to be transparent up front. Prairie Island does not internally have energy expertise. I'm their lawyer. We've got government relations people. We are heavily involved at this point because we advocated for this project at the state legislature and we're successful, and we are moving this project into the next part. But the whole goal of this piece of work that you guys are bidding on and proposing on is to get that expertise for the tribe. So that means, one, this is a big, important role that could be very broad in scope for the tribe. But two, I may not have, and the group on the phone may not have the very technical answers that you are used to, the type of information that you're used to dealing with as experts in your field. And, I apologize for that, but we all recognize that we're not the expertise that the tribe needs. We need someone, from y'all's group to come in and help us. So thank you for understanding that up front. But again, we're going to do our best to get you information that you need. JR and Tom, you want to add anything up front before we get into questions?
I don't have anything, Jesse.
And neither do I, Jesse. I would just one technical piece on the call here. We sent this notice out to approximately 40 individuals. We have 99 participants at this particular point, which is just fine. I would just note that our license only allows for 100 participants. So if we exceed that, frankly, guys, I don't know what happens if we get to 101 because I've never experienced that. So I just want to make a note of that we are reaching our capacity for our license. And if folks can't get in, it's due to that particular point. So I just want to make that point.
Okay, thank you. I'll jump into questions here. Do you have a preferred timeline or expectations for when task number 2, which is the technical analysis, or task number 3, which is the project plan, are completed? We do not, other than we have to keep within the timeline in the statute. And that was provided in the RFP packet, so you have that. Would you be able to share who you worked with to conduct initial scoping or analysis on the feasibility and components of a net zero approach? That was Gary Gustafson. Is the PIIC off-reservation trust land included in the scope of the net zero study, including for building retrofits? The answer is everything's on the table right now. Everything is up for analysis, for consideration, from our buildings to our land, fee land, trust land, acquiring additional land, if that is something that would benefit the tribe in meeting its goals. Very broad scope of what is possible. And if you read the legislation gives us a lot of leeway. So there's a lot of opportunity to be creative in the tools that we have here. What definition are you using for net zero energy, if any? Does it include transportation in the scope, or is that for the planning process to figure out? Yes, that is for the planning process to figure out. That is what we need someone to come in and engage with us on that planning work to do. Task 8 in the RFP requires the selected contractor to oversee and monitor all phases of the construction required to meet the project plan. Recognizing that any construction contracts will be with the Prairie Island and not with the selected contractor, and please let us know if we're not correct in this assumption, will Prairie Island assign staff to this task as well? Please talk a little bit more about your vision for how this process will work or goals for the selected contractor. Well, the tribal council will be heavily involved in this. There will also be staff involved, but that is still an evolving process, what that looks like. The selected contractor should be able to engage with the ultimate decision makers, which is the 5-person elected council for Prairie Island, but there also will, I anticipate, be intermediary staff people. It may be me. I'm going to try to, phase myself out of this project, but I'll always be around, and we may end up with someone specific on staff who is completely dedicated to this project, but a lot of that is to be determined. Now, with respect to the contracts, we do anticipate the contracts being held by Prairie Island at this time. Regarding the task of overseeing construction, we are interested in your thoughts on types of construction management models that you would consider, such as general contractor, construction manager at risk, or construction administrator. It's the goal for this consultant to act in the tribe's best interest. Construction management is, as this question indicates, there's a variety of different forms that can take, and we have not decided on any one single approach yet. Who does Prairie Island Indian community expect to be the key client contact to interface with the selected respondent? Again, at this time, it hasn't been determined. What does Prairie Island expect interaction and working relationship between the selected respondent and any outside consultants or legal teams to be? Well, you will be expected to work with our outside partners. We have some long-term strong partners. We have law firms, we have lobbyists, we have PR agencies, and this so far has been an interdisciplinary approach, and we expect that to continue. So there will be teamwork involved, but the goal is that we are seating the head of that team in this consultant. Ideally, we would like an expert in the field to be, you know, the main group guiding us through this.
Jesse, can I interrupt briefly?
Yes.
I just want to make a note. We are at 100 participants, and I don't see anybody else in the waiting room at this point. If I anticipate that there may be others who would like to get in, I'm not asking anybody to do this, but if anybody would like to volunteer to jump because their organization is represented by others, or there's a number of folks on the call, and maybe not everybody needs there, so others can get in and view this, that would be great. Otherwise, we're just at capacity, and I want to make a note of that.
Thank you. Question, the statute providing for the grant provides for a schedule of 16 million in fiscal year 21, 15.2 million in fiscal year 22, and 15 million in fiscal year 23. Does this represent a required spending schedule for the project to obtain the full grant amount, the earliest these amounts can be spent, or something else? The appropriation language in this statute dictates when the funds are available and at what amount. They will follow the state of Minnesota fiscal year. So that's July 21 and ends June 30. That the monies will be available on those dates that were mentioned and that are in the statute. But the funds are available until spent. So we have deadlines that are identified in the statute for reporting, for having a plan. But other than that, and JR, correct me if I'm wrong on this, there is not a must spend deadline.
That's correct. But I would make a note, Jesse, that the state will not advance funds before they are appropriated in the legislation. So in other words, the schedule you see in the bill that we've made a note of here is when those funds become available at those particular dates. So it's a 3-year funding cycle. So the total is 46.2, but the total isn't available until that last fiscal year 2023. So that.
Okay. Does Prairie Island have any schedule expectations or requirements that respondents should include in proposals, none other than those imposed by statute? Does Prairie Island have any existing energy studies or analysis that would be shared with the selected respondents? Yes. Once someone's on board and we finalize the contract and everything, you know, everything will be shared that we can possibly share. We have good relationships with the utilities. So absolutely all information possible will be at your fingertips. We have sent you guys a memo with energy usage information that we feel comfortable sharing at this point and with a broad group. And hopefully that is helpful. Can you describe expectations and goals regarding creation of a tribal utility or LLC? One of the goals is to explore this, and this to folks who have done work in Indian country is something that is happening more and more. Tribes are engaging their own, they're tapping into their own sovereignty with respect to energy and self-determination. And so this is something that the Prairie Island would very much like to see whether it fits with this project and what they want to do overall in their governance. And that would obviously be a policy decision of the tribal leaders and also a discussion with the community members. What historical energy use will be available for the project? We've provided energy use to you yesterday, and to the extent additional energy use is required to do the project once someone is on board, it will all be made available. Can you clarify what should be included in item 5 under proposal content regarding a description of fees and costs? Are you looking for a list of hourly rates? Given that this project would likely include a project definition, feasibility, and analysis phase, which would determine a subsequent design and construction management phase, it would be difficult to estimate a price without knowing the anticipated direction. Can you elaborate on your expectations for this information? You know, we're not wed to a specific compensation model. It can vary based on phases. You can put connotations on there that, you know, here is what the first phase would look like. Subsequent phases are going to be heavily dependent on what comes about in the first phase. You can add whatever caveats you'd like. You know, this is an estimate only. This is if things would proceed along the lines that we have laid out here. You know, I've had to do legal work responses, and sometimes you just gotta throw something out there and caveat that it might not look like this, but it's at least something for the reviewer to consider. And I understand that there are going to be a lot of different ways that folks who are responding to this are going to propose going about it. So it's going to look different, I'm sure, and that's for us to have to sift through and figure out how to compare. Is there a master plan for future development of reservation or trust holdings? If so, can we review a copy? There is not at this time. Are there lands under consideration for purchase to be incorporated into the Prairie Island Reservation or trust holdings? I'm not at liberty to discuss that. Have there been, but I should say that there's land that the tribe has purchased in recent years that is definitely up for grabs for this project. And that was included in the map that was sent with the memo yesterday. Has there been an energy team or department that has led Prairie Island energy planning efforts and member engagement to date? No. We've had we have people who work on utility issues, but there has not been a planning effort, as this question suggests, or member engagement to date. If not, what does Prairie Island envision as the makeup of the core tribal team during the planning stages of the net zero project, to be determined? Has the tribe previously completed any type of strategic energy planning? No. Are there any existing distributed energy projects such as rooftop solar on any of the buildings or homes? No. Does the tribe have any existing agreements with current energy providers, electricity and gas, that are outside the standard tariff structure? No. I have a consultant that would like to tour the site. Is this possible? We're not offering tours at this time, but, you know, to the extent someone would like to go visit Treasure Island, you're welcome to. I think there's a lot of things now, you know, especially seeing the map, you could review on your own, but we're not going to be providing tours as a part of this process. We plan to put in the US mail on Thursday prior to the 12th. The 12th is a federal holiday and you may not receive it on Monday, pending mail delivery. We will definitely make sure that you receive the digital file by the deadline, if not sooner. That is fine, but we need to have the digital copy in addition to the paper copy. The paper is not required. Does Prairie Island have a franchise agreement with the incumbent electric utility, presumably Xcel Energy, but please confirm, it's Dakota Electric. If a franchise agreement is available, can you provide further detail? You know, I don't believe so, but these questions I'm just seeing for the first time right now. They came in today, I think. And the team will have to look at these questions if I can't answer them today, which I can't on this one for sure. Does Prairie Island have an inventory of the incumbent utility assets located on the land? Not to my knowledge. Does Prairie Island have an estimate of potential load growth, electric or natural gas, over a 20-year horizon? No. Does Xcel Energy provide a franchise payment or other remuneration to Prairie Island for use of the tribal land to provide utility service? If so, can you please provide a description of how such a payment is calculated? No, not to my knowledge. What are the square footage details for each facility? We do not have that information available for this phone call. To the extent we are willing to provide that information, we will provide it in writing. Will a physical audit of the residential homes be required? I also don't have the answer to that question right now, but we can follow up on our best guess for that. That may fall into the category of we would need to rely on the expertise that we're gaining here to make that decision with us. What is the approximate location of planned residence and proximity to existing residents? There, so there's the Prairie Island Reservation, and there's about 3 housing developments there. There's the Lower Island, closest to the casino, and then there's 2 residential developments that are called the Upper Island, and I believe those are reflected in the maps. And then there is another, the next development will be at 316 and 61, which is identified on the maps. After that, there are not firm plans or timelines for anything. The Elk Run land, which is closer to Rochester, there's definitely goals for that to be housing at some point, but we don't have a timeline or a definitive plan for that. What contractual obligations might limit or restrict future use of fee properties? Contractual obligations, I'm not aware of any, but obviously we would fall under the state regulation and zoning more than, you know, the trust land. It's the tribe is the zoning authority, and obviously the state regulatory authority does not apply. But on fee land, we would be working within that construct. How large is the vehicle fleet? I don't have that answer for us today, but we can follow up. On page 5 of the RFP, under the heading Proposal Content, paragraph 1 indicates respondents should describe at least 3 relevant projects, either completed or ongoing, that the respondent has played a significant role in executing. Is the intent that respondents are required to have at least 3 net zero projects completed or ongoing to be eligible to respond to this RFP? No, I mean, I don't know what would even fall under a net zero project, so to speak, but, you know, relevant to what we're doing here. Is it a solar project? Is it leading a energy efficiency analysis? You know, it doesn't have to be apples to apples, but something that plays within this field that we can start understand the body of work that you have or are in the process of accumulating. In paragraph 2 of the same section, it states that respondents must provide at least 3 references from clients, preferably project owners or principals. Is it the intention that these 3 references be of net zero projects for the respondents to be eligible? And will non-net zero energy project references be considered? Yes, similar to my last answer, you know, we would like it to be within this area so we can understand your body of work and the folks that you've worked with, but it does not need to be a net zero project, so to speak. One consideration to achieve net zero is the addition of a solar energy generation system on community lands. Is that an agreeable consideration for Prairie Island? Yes, that is certainly within the scope of what we would be considering and looking at, but not definitive. And if so, has an analysis been completed on the usability of tribal land holdings that would be able to accommodate a solar energy system? You know, I don't know if a full inventory has been taken. So, you know, take all of our land, and then what are the opportunities for each parcel? I don't think that we did it that way. I think there was some particular pieces that were analyzed. Prairie Island is a land poor tribe. So it's not like we have a ton of options, and there's also quite a bit of land that is within the floodplain. So there are some obstacles. If so, how many acres of land are available for solar energy system application? That would be determined through the process that we will engage someone for. On page 7 of the RFP, section joint proposals indicates that joint proposals will be considered. And then on page 8 of this RFP under section preferences, paragraph 1 indicates a preference for Prairie Island member and Native American businesses. Can a list of Prairie Island businesses that would be considered certified be made available for possible consideration of teaming a joint proposal? I will have to get back to you on that. We'll have to circle back on that question. I'm not sure if that would be something that we would be at liberty to share as far as the tribal member businesses and so on. So I will get back to you on that. To assist respondents in the assessment of the project scope prior to the RFP proposals deadline of October 12, will the following information be provided to entities that have submitted an intent to respond? Will current and historical electric and natural gas consumption data to calculate the aggregate energy consumption and load profiles be provided? What we provided in the memo is what we anticipate providing, the extent of what we're going to provide. Will a summary of building types, property types, quantity, square footage, and energy load, et cetera, be made available? Again, at this time, we anticipate not providing any additional information above what was in the memo. Will a list of utility providers and rate tariffs be provided? Same answer. And will a list of vehicle types and quantity be provided? That one, I think is reasonable and we may be able to provide, but I'll have to go back and work with the team on that. Who do you feel are the project's main stakeholders? I think that's a really good question. I think just to add some color, the vision setting, which is going to be the first phase of this, we anticipate, is really important. And the stakeholder that is most important in my mind is the community members. And I think that's been expressed by the tribal leaders, that this is a tribal member owned project. In addition, we have lobbied the state for this opportunity in part so that it can be an innovative beginning to end project that can be used as a model going forward for entities in Minnesota, for tribes, for anyone. And so we believe that we are looking at this as a very public and visible project that has statewide interest and stakeholders. And I think the legislature is also a stakeholder. This is, to our knowledge, the largest grant of state money to a tribe in the state's history. So I think there's a lot of people, if not a direct stakeholder, there's a lot of interested parties. And we want to make sure that we're communicating to all of them and everyone feels at least informed about this project, but feels positive about what they've done here. And when we advocated for this project at the legislature, we made clear that this is not a shovel-ready project. And I think you probably, from all of our comments, can see that we indicated that this would start with a process that required us to get expertise on board. So that is exactly where we're at in the project. Where would resistance, if any, of the project come from? Current energy providers or others? I feel we've done a good job of communicating with the current energy providers, with Dakota Electric and with Xcel Energy as well. They don't provide energy to the reservation, but they are definitely a partner of ours in other ways. And both are very supportive of this project and supported it at the legislature. you know, perhaps there were some folks at the legislature that didn't love this project or wanted to see money go to other projects. We think that through a transparent and diligent process here, we can certainly make them, you know, advocates of the project, or at least not naysayers. But other than that, you know, I don't know who would be not cheering for this project. JR or Tom, any thoughts on that?
I would agree, Jesse. I think everything you said is fantastic. I think our goal is, as Jesse mentioned, to have a well-run, transparent facing project where we demonstrate what can be done in an innovative manner, and it becomes a gem for folks. So I think if anybody's worried about resistance from the project, I think we can control our own destiny to some degree on that front by simply doing a great job.
And I just want to make a few more comments before opening it up to questions here live. Prairie Island, and if anybody does any independent research of Prairie Island, its energy story has been a terrible one for a long time. Prairie Island was put on a tiny reservation on an island, and it flooded through the lock-in dam being placed there illegally. It then was subjected to a nuclear power plant being put on top of it on the island. And no other human beings in the country live closer to a nuke plant and to spent nuclear waste. And, you know, whether you're a proponent of nuclear energy or not, and whether Xcel runs the best operation possible. And like I said, I mean, we have a positive relationship with Xcel, but it is still living steps from a nuke plant and the dangers that are real there. This project represents an opportunity for Prairie Island to take that energy story, the historical one that's been put on them, and turn to own their energy story, right? And to determine what that looks like. And so it's very exciting for a lot of reasons, but for that as a main one. And also, as you know, I'm a citizen of the Muskogee Creek Nation of Oklahoma, and I just love what Indian people and tribes are doing around energy right now. I think that it is a modern day expression of what we've always done. We harvest from the land, we live within the natural resources respectfully, we honor it. And I believe that that's what this project is possible of in the energy realm. You know, it's up for people like you guys, like the respondents, to talk about this project in very technical ways, and we need that. But I also see this project as a tribe and as Native people embracing this energy in a way that is consistent with what we've always done historically. And so to me, that's very exciting as a cultural expression as well. And with that, we can go ahead and start taking questions live.
And Jesse, I have got a couple in the chat, and I'm going to save the chat. So if folks if you want to message me or message everyone in the chat, that would be ideal. Given that we do have now 94 people on the call, and I would unmute everybody, but we know how that goes on Zoom sometimes. So if we can do chat, that'd be great. If not, raise your hand and we can work on that. The two questions in the chat that we have thus far, Jesse, are where does the Prairie Island community get their water? And the second one is the supplemental packet says to email the RFP responses by Monday, 10/12, with no mention of hard copies. Are we requiring 10 hard copies, and what date and time do they need to be received? So the first one is water, second one is hard copies.
Water, we have our own wastewater treatment facility. So the tribe operates it from ground well water. if there's any other specific questions on that.
There isn't. And the next question, Jesse, then is, are hard copies required to be sent, or is an electronic copy to the email address by 5 p.m. on October 12th sufficient?
Jared, did we have that listed in the RFP?
I'd have to go back and look. If it doesn't, I do not believe we mentioned hard copies in the RFP.
Okay.
I believe we only said that it had to be submitted via the email address.
Okay, then we'll leave it at that. Jared's going to be doing a lot of copying and collating.
The next question is, will there be an access to this recording of the Zoom meeting since we hit our cap?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can we do that, Jared?
Yes, we're going to work on doing that. I have a special relationship with Zoom that's not always friendly, so we'll work on that after this. The next one is there a preliminary budget which outlines project budget allocations which are anticipated to be covered by the 46.2 million in funding? If so, can you please provide a high-level breakdown of projects to be covered within current funding?
No, we don't have a budget other than what is in the statute. Now, I will say that there was, there was a presentation that was done to the legislature that was very conceptual. The work that was done previous will be informative, but it is not guiding this. We want a fresh look at this. So we don't have any budget expectations other than what's in the statute at this time.
The next item is the scope of services. Item 8 indicates oversee and monitor all phases of the construction required to meet the project plan. Can you please provide an indication of the preliminary expectation of what construction projects this is likely to include?
Boy, that's going to be part of what is looked at, right? But potentially there could be some retrofitting work at the existing buildings. There could be solar or storage construction. I mean, I think construction is probably a loose term for development or building. Anything that would require additional parties to come on and create or develop, we'd probably put under that category. And I should say that, yeah, the contractor that we're looking to bring on right now isn't the one that we would think would build everything. We think this is the individual who's going to advise the tribe on all facets of it. And then as we go into separate pieces of it, we would obviously further engage different parties.
Yeah, and this is JR. The legislation specifically requires the community to become net zero, but it does not say how to do that. So as we mentioned earlier in a previous question, that's part of the planning phase, I think, that would seek to answer those questions. And then the additional work, the construction work as we're calling it, I think would be born out of those policy decisions made through the technical analysis by the vendor that's hired here. Next question, do you intend a successful proposal to include a vendor that would or could design and construct an actual energy plant and related infrastructure, or to conduct the necessary analysis first for the plan and then bring in such a vendor to the team later?
I think we're envisioning conduct the necessary analysis for the plan and then bring in vendors later. I think the next step that we really need is someone to do analysis, additional analysis, plan development, design, and that community engagement piece. So that's what we're looking to plug into. After that, we understand that there would be other parties involved.
Next question, is net zero intended to include all community-wide scope 1 and scope 2 emission categories as outlined by the greenhouse gas protocol? In other words, solid waste and wastewater associated emissions.
I would say that would be something that the tribe would want to be educated on to make a decision. So yes.
Who are included in the Prairie Island Net Zero implementation team? Are these the decision makers for technical decisions?
You mean the, like, who's deciding on the RFP? Can you read that one again?
Yep. Who are included in the Prairie Island Net Zero implementation team? Are these the decision makers for technical decisions? And Jesse, they're probably getting Prairie Island Net Zero implementation team because that's how we've been signing the emails.
Oh.
So
We will be involved in the process. We've been shepherding the process. The evaluation team is still under development and subject to final approval by tribal council. Can tell you that tribal council will definitely be part of that.
would a contractor creating the plan be allowed to self-perform or act as general contractor for the plan identified work? Are the specific members of the selection committee known at this point? So the first one is, would a contractor creating the plan be allowed to self-perform or act as a GC for the plan identified work?
I don't know the answer to that question offhand, so we'll have to follow up.
Are the specific members of the selection committee known at this point?
No.
Is the tribe interested in strategies to leverage the state funds through approaches to seek and utilize federal and other grant funds, tax credits, etc.?
I believe so, yes.
On page 7, item 3 of your RFP, you asked for 10 hard copies. I think, I think the question is, if we get you the electronic on 10/12, when do you need to get the 10 hard copies?
Ah,
We do say that, yes. Sorry about that. Apologies.
so when do we need to get the hard copies?
Correct.
As soon as possible thereafter, but if it does not get there the 12th, that's okay.
So to put a finer point on it, Jesse, electronic copy for sure by
Correct.
5 p.m. on October 12th, and hard copies can follow.
Yes.
Will a successful RFP selectee be ineligible to be technology and systems integration provider?
That is a question that we will have to circle back on.
Another email about our page 7, item 3, hard copies. Thank you all very much for that point. Lastly, are there existing decision-making processes or frameworks within the community that should be followed in this project? Are there existing guiding principles in the community that should be used to guide the visioning phase of this project?
I don't have additional insight or response to that question at this time, other than what's been shared and the, I believe, 8 elements that are put out in the RFP for what will be looked at.
Has Prairie Island conducted a climate change vulnerability assessment and/or a climate change adaptation plan?
No, but that is something that could certainly be within the scope of this.
Does Prairie Island Indian Community have a current greenhouse gas inventory, both community-wide as well as tribal government operations?
Not to my knowledge.
Those are the questions we have so far in the chat. The scope of services item 4 includes participate and assist with any review by the legislature or other public bodies or authorities with jurisdiction or significant interest in the process of progress of the project, excuse me. Can you please identify what currently known public bodies and authorities are anticipated to have review requirements and what is currently known about those review requirements?
Well, I think that's going to depend on the scope of the project, right? I mean, if we're on fee land, it will look different than if we're on trust land, if we're doing solar, if we're creating our own tribal utility. So I don't have a definitive answer on that one.
I can speak to that a touch, Jesse. I think What we do know is that there are legislative requirements in the legislation to report to the legislature at various times. We also are required to submit a total cost of the project plan by January 1, 2022. And then we are going to likely undergo scrutiny from the legislature, and it may be through individual meetings with legislators, it may be at a committee hearing, it may be the legislative auditor may want to talk to the Department of Commerce, who is administering the grant, and then by extension us. It may be regulatory scrutiny. So what I do know and can say definitively is that there are the reporting requirements that you can find in the enabling legislation that we've included. As to the other interactions or scrutiny by the legislature or other public bodies, it will likely be ongoing and could be in any manner that I listed. Regarding the question of whether this is a consulting contract versus potentially selection of a design/development partner is a core one. Do you know when this will be answered?
Can you repeat that, Chair?
Regarding the question of whether this is a consulting contract versus potentially selection of a design development partner is a core one. Do you know when this will be answered?
I don't have a date for when it'll be answered, no.
Is there a preference tiebreaker in the event all things are considered equal? Tribal member owned business, Native American Indian owned business?
This would be ultimately a decision for tribal council and the finalization of our evaluation process. But the tribe has, its tribal member and Native American preference adopted into ordinance. So that will certainly play a part.
Does Prairie Island receive any additional EE incentives from a local utility? I presume that's energy efficiency incentives from a local utility.
I believe there is an arrangement with Treasure Island Resort and Casino, but I would have to get back on details with that.
No further questions in the queue at this point, but we'll give it a minute. Thank you for your time and responses. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your patience with us.
Yeah. Is there a possibility of state funds being terminated if the work does not proceed at a fast enough pace?
Well, Tom's on mute.
Oh.
Thanks, Jesse. There's nothing in the statutory language that indicates that, but it is a legislative appropriation. So we don't think so, but it's the legislature and we have to work with it.
A finer point on that piece. The legislature appropriated these funds for this purpose. In order for the legislature to terminate the funds, they would have to affirmatively do so by passing a bill to do as much, which would mean that both the House, the Senate, and the governor would have to agree to terminate the funds. So, which is especially these days, a very much a process. As Tom mentioned, I think that the legislature, appropriates funds, and I think the speed at which this is completed is less of an issue versus how it's completed.
Okay, well, additional
Jesse,
questions?
yeah, 1 second, sorry, just came through. Thank you guys, great job. Thank you for the compliment.
Thank you.
Would never miss the opportunity to give ourselves a shout out, right, Jesse? Would Prairie Island be open to proposals which offer an alternative approach concept which could address a recommended approach that looks to address more clearly outlining consultant services versus building energy system design services versus construction services? Let me read that again. So would Prairie Island be open to a proposal which offers an alternative approach concept, which could be a recommended approach that looks to address more clearly outlining consultant services versus building/energy system design services versus construction services?
I think the answer is yes, if I understand what the question is getting at, that, we're not set on any one way of doing this. And if that's one thing you should take away from today is there is a lot of opportunity to create and shape this process. So to the extent there's a proposal to do it a way that you think would be in the best interest of the Prairie Island Indian community within this statute, I think there would be interest in evaluating that.
We just want to make sure in the end that we're net zero according to statute when all is said and done.
Yeah,
we're open to how we get there.
We absolutely have to meet the definitions within the statute, but even that and how to define net zero is up for discussion. Okay.
Further questions? Perhaps one last shot?
All right. Well, the email is still available as a means of question asking, and thank you for using that and focusing your communication there. We appreciate it.
Okay, I think
All
we
right.
will.
Everyone have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks so much.